So I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ann Cole, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Federation of Art. Thank you for joining us on this Labor Day weekend for our awards ceremony for American Landscapes. In this exhibition, we asked artists to reflect upon the landscapes of their lives, whether rural, urban, or suburban, and which were located in North America, Central America, or South America. I hope that you'll have a chance to come in and see this exhibition in person in Circle Gallery before September 24th or on September 24th, which is when it will close, and we'll host an in-person closing reception here in Circle Gallery from 4 to 6 p.m. I'm excited to introduce Al Gury, a professor of art at the Philadelphia Academy of the Fine Arts. Al received his bachelor's in fine arts and humanities from St. Louis University and his master's in fine arts from the University of Delaware. He is a painter of the figure, landscape, still life, and portraits, and he is the recipient of the Crescent Travel Scholarships and numerous grants and awards for painting and arts education. Not only does he teach at the higher education level, he also dedicates his time as the program director of the After School Studio Art Program for Philadelphia high school students. Al has been a dedicated juror for us here at MFA. Al, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, it's very nice to meet everyone. I'm enjoying being with you. This was an honor to be the juror for this exhibition. I'm very grateful to the Maryland Federation of Art for including me. A little bit about myself, and said I'm a painter, professor at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts here in Philadelphia, and where I've been head of painting for many years, and we just rotated that job, so I have fewer meetings to attend, which is a real godsend, I'll tell you. If those of you who are teachers, you all understand that. But anyway, I'm on plenty of committees. But it's an honor to work there. I teach undergraduate and graduate students from all over the world, and focus on painting and drawing and art education. And the program that Ann mentioned, it's a free arts program that I invented 27 years ago for inner city Philadelphia high school youth. And it's free, it's paid for by grants. And it also is an opportunity for me to teach grad students how to be teachers. It's a really wonderful program. And right now it's especially needed for everything that is challenging these young people. So it's a very, very nice thing. I'm a painter. I'm also a writer. I've written a number of books on painting and drawing, and write a pretty steady stream of articles that are published from as far away as the United States to Asia about art and art history, a lot of publications, and that's really enjoyable. And I get involved in a lot of urban activities, things like the Mural Arts Program as a juror. I try to support the art community across this wonderful region. My secret love, which is not so secret, is I've worked for many years in animal rescue. And that's another part of my life. Some of you know that, especially cats. So I've fostered over 3,000. I work as a volunteer nurse and really try to make a difference for these least of little souls who are often abused and neglected terribly. So that's I have 3 little foster kittens right now, and so it's a joy. Also, it's hard work, but it's worth it. That's a little bit about me. I really look forward to your question. I teach a lot online actually for adult education, so I'm really comfortable with the online format, and so I teach a lot of adult ed courses for PAFA's continuing education program, one of which is landscape painting. So please ask your questions when that time comes, and don't be shy. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the exhibition. The hard part about an exhibition, especially a big, very inclusive exhibition, is that there's so much good work. It's very difficult. How do you give awards? How do you choose when there is so much good work? That's the hard part. And I can tell you, from my heart that I tried really hard to be as inclusive and diverse in the work as possible. Some jurors, as I said to Anne, they come to this with a particular idea of what they like. They only choose what they like. I'm not that way. I love all kinds of art and celebrate it. So what I did was I tried to look at the many different genres of work: three-dimensional, two-dimensional, photography, aqueous media, all these things, and then try to get a sense of which ones, as difficult as that really was to do, which ones might be representative at this moment in this exhibition. Not being able to choose everybody was so painful, but I hope you like the exhibition. I hear that it's looks great in the gallery. It's extremely stimulating. So I'm hoping that you are all happy with it. Those who received awards and honorable mentions, again, I did my best to try to support everybody, as best as I could. So I look forward to hearing your questions about such things. Does anyone have any questions at the moment before we start looking at the work? Somebody does.
My name is Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Yeah, can you just, I mean, you talked a little bit about the process, but when you sit down, how do you start to just a little bit more in depth of how you go through this process of looking at art works, and what are the things that stand out for you that draw you to pieces?
Sure, that's a very good question. I kind of approach it the way I would going into any exhibition on my own. If I was going into a museum or to a gallery, I would walk around, I would take a look at everything, try to get a feel for things. So what I did was I reviewed all the work a number of times to try to get a sense of what was there and what some of the nuances were, the variety, the materials. I opened them up and looked at them closely. It's as you know, it's a little different seeing them online. But on the other hand, if you do enough of that, you can kind of pretty much get a sense of the surface and so forth. The one thing you don't get a sense of is the physical presence, the size, the scale. But still, the impact of the works were very strong. So what I did was I reviewed everything, and then I started making one pass after another, going through things, making note of things that stood out to me as being interesting for various reasons, until I felt that I had a group to select from and narrow that down further. So there was a lot of viewing, a lot of revisiting, going over and over. Also trying to make sure that there was nothing I missed, nothing that I, went over too fast, might have misunderstood when I first looked at it. That's why I looked very closely and expanded the images so I could see very closely what they look like. And so that's kind of what the process was like. And I made a lot of notes. So it was a very stimulating process. I hope that helped a little bit, Claire, or Carol rather, I'm sorry. Any other questions at the moment before we take a look at these?
Hi, Al. This is Aisha. I have a question. Just kind of continuing on with the last one. I understand that you had there was more than 600 entries. I'm just curious, how long does the process take you from the initial stage all the way to the final selection?
Well, it's days. It's not a fast process. And so I looked at things over a number of days. I dedicated time to it because it was, fortunately, I hadn't started school yet, and my other lecture obligations gave me the time that I could actually sit with it. So, I spent a number of days, a few hours at a time, sometimes, a couple hours, sometimes several. And so that's kind of, how it worked out. And I thought about it in the same way that I might be preparing a lecture. How will I talk about these things? What actually verbally stood out in this work, in that work, that kind of thing. So I really kind of approach the whole thing the way I do in writing books and writing articles, in critiquing the classwork of students, doing my own work, sitting back in my studio. And I can show you a picture of my studio online here, sitting back and looking at my own work and just thinking about it So that's kind of how I approach that process, that part of the process.
Thank you. I could imagine it's probably, I'm just thinking if I were in your situation, it would be very difficult for me to judge art, because I could probably find something that I like about each piece. But thank you for the answer.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was not a piece in the submissions that was not interesting and beautiful in some way. The hard part, again, was identifying, a critical mass of elements in each work that made it really stand out somehow, even though there might be other works that were also very, very, very strong. That's just the pain of, that process. So I think about it the same way I do as a teacher. I try to approach it really thoughtfully and with great care. Are there any other questions at the moment?
Yeah, are you given a number of pieces to select for the exhibit?
Yeah, there were 630.
I know that, but for the show, are you given a finite number to accept?
Oh, for the exhibit, yes. They told me that I should keep it to between 60 and 65. I'm not sure the final number at this moment, but I think it was around 63. Anne can probably identify that number. So
I'm just curious, do you think in these group shows, should the artist be told how many people are going to be accepted?
that's up to the policy of the organization.
I know, but I'm asking your opinion.
Well,
Because I mean, you could submit something and they accept 25 pieces. Do you think that should be known to the artist ahead of time?
I mean, there's a couple of ways of looking at that. One way is if you tell a group, it may discourage submission. They may say, well, there's an odds that I might not get accepted. So that's not helpful. On the other hand, if you do set a specific number, you also want to keep that flexible, because you may find, let's say, you're told you can accept 100 pieces and you may have 110 and they're all worthy. I'm not entirely sure. I see it both ways.
Mhm.
Having been in many exhibitions myself, where I was told and not told, or applied for many grants, which I received or didn't receive. In the end, to me, it didn't matter. What mattered was the submission process, that I was engaged, I was trying, I was being involved as an artist, I was risking submitting things, no matter how many were accepted. And a lot of times they just don't tell you, they really don't. I'm waiting to hear from a museum right now who said, I will be offered an exhibition, but they have not told me how many people will be. And it's okay. I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions at the moment? These are good
Not
questions.
not a question, but just thank you for fostering the little felines.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a great joy. They end up in my paintings occasionally, and I use it. One of my goals as an educator is to try to help the contemporary youth in my care to understand how they can help in the world. And there's many, many ways. And so I tell them all that I've always been involved in social justice activities and worked with homeless people for many years. I've worked with the elderly for many years. I've done a lot of parallel, career things. And so what I try to do is help them. The animals are a shoe-in because art students love animals. They absolutely love it. And we had an exhibition recently at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts of artworks that included animals. And so the students love it. But thank you very much, Aisha. In the chat, there is, do you think photography and painting should be included together? Or do you think they should be in separate shows? Again, that's a tough one because in this venue, the photography and painting and the other media, all were talking about America and the landscape and so forth. So to me, it's about the beauty and the quality or the interest of the work, that kind of thing. On the other hand, I do know exhibitions that specifically specify a medium. But when it's open like this, I think it was very good because some of the design issues in the photography that I saw were, similar to the design issues in the paintings or the watercolors. Some of the abstract qualities of the photography was similar to the abstract qualities of the painting. So I tried to look at them all as not as, oh, it's photography, oh, it's painting, but rather, what has the artist done with this to make this really compelling? And that's how I personally approached it, as opposed to saying, oh, it's photography, therefore it's not the same. No, I think it is the same, can be the same. So I approached it that way. I wasn't looking for, separating things out into silos. But of course, a photography show or a painting show would be of great interest in the same subject. Well, we might as well get started. Well, our first grouping are the honorable mentions. I just want to comment about each piece. There's a lot could be said, but the essential ideas I had about each piece or grouping of pieces. This artist, the piece above on top, I really particularly loved the tension between two-dimensional and three-dimensional. It has a sense of depth in a traditional sense, but it's created in a very unique way. And the almost collage element, which includes the images below, I thought was very, very interesting because it was talking about very personal things and who these people are. They engaged you. The collage quality of the whole thing was very, very interesting. It, reminded me a little bit, because of the age of the pictures, it reminded me of Europe a little bit. And I love the design of it, the way that it was placed inside the rectangle, and the use of this intense pale value and shape relative to the small assembled elements of the buildings themselves. And then this fence at the bottom was a good foil, because otherwise it might have gone off the bottom. I just thought there was some really wonderful subjective and objective elements in this piece.
That was my piece, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Sure, Rebecca. I just thought it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. This one, acrylic paint on cradled birch wood panel by Kathy Moore. The value, doing a painting just in dark and light value, grayscale, I thought was really interesting. And when I expanded it to look at it closely, I was really taken by the variety of textures. And there's a lot of little surprises in this painting, like the swing on the side or the way this fence is tilted, the textures in the foreground. A lot of times in a landscape, people neglect the foreground. And when I teach landscape painting, which I do all the time for PAFA's continuing ed online, we talk about that bottom 25%. We talk about the four corners as the two different areas of weak spots in landscapes, because most people focus on the area that initially attracted them, often something in the distance. But Kathy Moore attended to all areas, had a wonderful, rich variety of textures and nuance. And as I said, little surprises in these small areas and the textural brush differences. And also what she did with the acrylic was interesting because it has a rich, visceral quality to it that sometimes acrylic doesn't allow for. And so she really pulled a lot out of this. And it also has a strong abstract quality to it. The shapes of the buildings, the various gradations. If you took away the details, it would be a really wonderful abstract design as well. So I thought that was a pretty wonderful piece. Carol Cowie, there is a poetry in this that I thought was absolutely lovely. The texture, I had the impression, I don't know if the artist is present with us at the moment, but I had the impression that it was a mixture of both brush and painting knife. And so the textures that the artist was able to create, and all in a mute palette. I was very interested in the palette for this, dominated by earth colors or near earth colors, like the green might be a chromium oxide green, but the ochres at siennas, maybe a little touch of blue in this, but a very limited palette. And also the way it was cropped at the top, and this intense kind of quiet about this. It's interesting that some of the pieces that were submitted were very much about the human footprint, and others were completely devoid of it. And those are two very interesting approaches to landscape and contemporary landscape painting, things that are all about us and things that are the land without us. I found this one to have that quiet without that human presence, but it was also, again, I look at the formal and the informal qualities, the formal being the shape, the pattern, the design, the color, the texture, and then the informal, the emotional quality, the subjectivity, content, how it feels, those kinds of things. So I thought this one had a beautiful balance again, and just the way the reflections were handling the corners and the different areas. So I thought it was a lovely limited palette atmospheric painting. This one, mixed media, and I had an impression, I'm not entirely sure of what the materials were. Is the artist present who did this? Julia, could you tell us what the materials are that you used?
Yeah, so this was watercolor and acrylic ink on paper.
That's kind of what I thought. I love the feeling of drawing. And when I get into the history and practice of drawing, because master techniques and methodologies are one of my specialties, I talk about open and closed form. And open form meaning atmosphere, edge differences, think Rembrandt. And then closed form meaning it's all about line, it's all about edge. The form is delineated by line. You can think of early Renaissance people like Botticelli, things like that. Well, what Julia, I felt, used in this was a beautiful synthesis of the two. The details in the foreground, the edges of the fence, and then there's this wonderful, it dissolves into these open form atmospheric qualities that really comes to bear in the sky. So I thought it was a really well done mixture of two very hard to do drawing methods, and then the use of the ink and so forth gave it a tremendous strength. There's great value construct here that is very bold, and I was especially interested in the foreground because the foreground, which bears most of the detail and most of the closed form elements, really zoom towards us. So I thought that was a beautiful thing, and I encourage you, in that, how you handle that. Beautiful piece.
Thank you very much. This is the first time I've ever gotten an honorable mention or an award or anything. So it's very, very exciting for me.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy for you. This one, Sandra, is Sandra here with us? As I said earlier, I really wanted to focus on variety and various forms of art that have meaning in the world today and also are very personal in many ways. When I saw that it was entitled Ghost Ranch, I've been to Ghost Ranch. I was very aware of the feeling that Sandra got into this image, even though it has a very abstract, expressive, even childlike quality to it. The different kind of touches, line, very simple color variety. It looks like it's colored pencil and watercolor, and just the way that she used line and then these passages of color. But also, she was not afraid to simplify and abstract the different elements of the landscape. In other words, in a very whimsical way, she responded to what she saw and then left out an awful lot. But what she put in was very, very strong. So there was a selective process here that on the one hand was very formal, but on the other hand had a wonderful subjective quality to it that was, almost kind of innocent in a way. It's like Matisse said that he wanted to recapture the innocence of his childhood, where he could just pick up crayons and do whatever he felt like. And I think that's a wonderful goal for us, all of us as artists. And that's what I liked about this one. David Diaz, is David here? In painting, one of the discussions is around painterly painting, alla prima painting, as we all know. And, that's something I engage in myself that I love doing. But of course, there are many other things to love as well. But this one I thought had a wonderful composition in the layering and the alla prima quality of it. I thought it was a wonderful, fresh sketch, probably done very quickly. In particular, the darks that punctuated these areas gave an anchor to the whole thing. So it wasn't just brushwork, it was also the dark values and the play of neutral colors against less neutral colors. So I thought it had a really good overall quality, great simplicity, real good qualities of the brush. The kind of thing that showed, skill, but also a kind of an economy, an understanding of the economy and what a brush can do with very limited means. The square format I thought was interesting as well, the way it framed all these diagonals and rich texture.
I really appreciate your comments. This is the first time that I've been part of a getting feedback on the artwork that I've submitted various places.
Oh,
And it's an education. It's wonderful to have someone who has spent so much time in your life thinking about these things. And it's like having a little mini seminar, and I really hearing about everybody else's work. It's very, your comments about going into the corners and your comments. I'm not a painter, so I find it very interesting to hear your comments about painting as well.
well, thank you, Carol. All the artworks in the exhibition have similar qualities in that they have strong, both formal and informal qualities. And the formal ones have to do with composition, the use of materials, value, shape, constructs, whether they're three-dimensional or not, no matter what the medium is. And then the informal ones in the exhibition are very strong too, in that there is an impact that each image has that really stood out. I love to critique those things with how we do it in my classes. I make it very practical, and the landscape painters really, really enjoy it. And it kind of takes them sometimes out of their comfort zone, but that's good because then their work starts growing and improving. And the discussions are really, really fun, and people's comments are really fun. I love that. And, the online format for that has been pretty marvelous. Good, let me check the chat. There's something in there. Love the palette, yes. Love this piece in person, yes. Wonderful. I guess we can go forward. This one really stood out to me. I mean, maybe partly because of the times we're living in. And I'm a big advocate of the environment and nature and supporter as best as I can be. And I love this for a number of reasons. First of all, the materials, the mixture of materials that were used, the text in a sculpture. There were resonances of Native American sculpture, but yet it has a very contemporary feel to it and a strong iconic quality to it. And then this note, this little statement that's almost like a haiku on the front of this. To me, it resonated on a lot of different levels. The material itself, it's been kept very simple and direct in sculpture. I've taught sculpture, I've written about sculpture. So it's something that I do enjoy thinking about a lot. And so that's why this one really stood out to me for a whole bunch of reasons. And then the subjective quality of this, to me is very, very, very strong. It's like a totem, a talisman. It's giving us something important to think about. So I thought it was a really, really wonderful piece. Thank you for Jim Mackey. Thank you, Jim. Is Donna in the group?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Donna.
Hello.
Hi. The thing I loved about this, it was a little bit obvious, the dimensionality of it. It was almost like a stage set in a way. looking through things, into things, past things. It's a little bit like being in the woods itself and looking through things, looking through underbrush to see things beyond. And, in this, you managed, again, the near to far, the sharper, darker, clearer coming forward, softer, more middle tone, less edgy going back, creating optics of aerial perspective. And then the way this was framed, with the two quite different trees, the plants, the background, the movements within, and then the layering itself. So there was a wonderful variety of layers to this that were, again, to use that word that I used before, surprising, there were many small surprises. And everywhere you look, there are little notes, there are little things that are very, very interesting, just as looking and being in the woods itself. And then doing this with, is this plexiglass?
Yes, layers of plexiglass and literally drawings that I've taken apart and rephotographed. I'm playing with different materials. It's expensive and an interesting journey.
It is. It's expensive, time consuming, et cetera, but well worth it.
Yes.
So everyone who we're seeing tonight, all of you, please keep it up, because we need it now more than ever. I'll make my little statement. I think that art is one of the things that's going to save us. So no matter who we are, no matter what we believe in, art, kindness, love, that's it. Art is at the center of that. There's a great deal of love and attention in this piece. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. This recognition came at a good time, because when you work in isolation, although I do go into classes for models, it's hard and you sort of lose faith, but to be acknowledged, I feel that I can no longer worry about having a garage sale. I need to keep pressing on to be recognized.
Yes.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you for your time and all your interesting insights. And to everyone, I hope to meet you someday in the gallery. And congratulations to those of you with honorable mentions and prizes.
Thank you so much, Donna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Smita Parida, I hope I said that right. Archival pigment print. One of the things that I have always been very interested in is photography in its history. I actually wrote part of my master's thesis. It was on the photography of Thomas Eakins. I became very interested in the way photography is manipulated, and things like carbon prints and photographs that actually have all the qualities of other media. This one, I thought, really did. It has a strong graphic quality that one sees often in printmaking, and then the simple shape, which is very mysterious, this organic quality. It makes you wonder, what is that? And probably silhouettes of stone or a tree or something, and then this amazing field, probably of stars, starlight. But I thought that it was a very powerful image. The archival pigment print, doing photography that has other qualities in the pigments, actually in the printing inks and things like that. We're so used to photographs that are glossy, smooth. They're often not, particularly in the hands of artists. So there were many reasons why I love this and why it stood out. So congratulations on this very, very beautiful piece. It transcends ordinary ideas of photography. So I thought that was very beautiful. This one stood out to me for very personal reasons. But first, the formal ones, I was happy to be able to support a fiber piece in including the range that people had actually submitted. So that was important. And formally, I felt that it had a wonderful composition. Just like any of the other landscapes, it had textural variety, the composition, the anchoring of different colors, the repetition of colors, you know, these various threads and stitching, touches of orange, which then relates to this large sun. There's a repetition of color that often happens in an abstract painting or, you know, an impressionist painting. The personal aspect of it for me was that my grandmother was a great quilter. And so I grew up watching her and my great aunts make quilts by hand, hand stitched, and later machine stitched, but mostly hand. So I have a sensitivity to fiber art and wanted to recognize that as being a beautiful piece, that it embodies really a sense of forest, of stream, of mountains, of sky, of sun. It's all there, but it also has a strong formal quality in the things I mentioned, and also the repetition of angles and shapes. So I thought that it was a very, very strong and very interesting piece in its genre of fiber art. And I thought this has to be included. So those are some of my thoughts about that. I'm a great collector of antique quilts. I've often felt that it was the anonymous work of generations of women. And to me, many of those works are every bit as fine as some contemporary abstract painting. Quilting and fiber art means a lot to me. There you all are. So, does anyone have any wonderings that have come up during this discussion? Any formal questions about art, painting, art history? You know, you can see I really get into this. I love teaching adults, especially online. Strangely enough, who knew? Until the lockdown, I never knew that. And I had to learn quickly. And as a college, we had to roll over in 1 week, literally. And I also made tons of educational videos. So, whole new skill. But any questions about art stuff in general? Yes, Rebecca.
I just wondered, are each of these pieces that were selected, are they all honorable mention, or is there one that was first prize, second prize, you know, in a different category?
Hi, Rebecca. So the first 5 that were mentioned were honorable mentions, and then the last 5 were Juror's Choice Awards, and they're unranked.
Thank you.
I kind of saw them, all 10 of them, as the same, but again, I was required to make choices, and you know, so I did as best as I could. Any other art questions, art world questions? Well, you got me, go for it.
This is Julia Berzon. I have a question. I am finding that in my work, if I spend a lot of time on something, it is often less successful than the things that are playful and, yeah, you know, quick. And I'm just wondering if that's something that I mean, I know going down a rabbit hole and overthinking things is an issue of mine. But, you know, I'm just wondering if in your teaching you see that as a recurring kind of theme.
Yeah, it is. It is a recurring theme, and just like one of the recurring themes is having a bad day or a good day. You know, I started classes this past week, and one of the things I always do is talk about the psychology of being an artist with them. And I wanted to encourage them that you may be having a bad day. Don't beat yourself up. It's just a day. It'll pass. The same with overdoing a work, spending too much time, how much time. It's a rather subjective thing. And if you feel that you're overworking it, first of all, that's very, very normal. I can tell you today, yes, it's very, very common. And let me try and screen share.
Because it can be kind of frustrating.
It's very, very
You know?
frustrating. It's very frustrating. I was working on a painting today, a still life, and it was part of a series, and the 2 or 3 before, I felt I had been pretty spontaneous. This one, I kept changing things. I kept reconfiguring edges. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to overwork this. It's going to be not as fresh as the others because I was frustrated that bits and pieces I could not get the way they wanted. And of course, what I always say to students is frustration. I joke with them that one of my favorite word in class is the F word. And so I say to them, it's frustration, because that means you care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't experience frustration. That's true of anything we care about. So I get that way all the time. I try to sense, am I overdoing it because I don't know what I want from it? Am I overdoing it because I'm tired? Am I overdoing it because I'm not happy with something about it overall? And so what I try to do in that case is bring it to a conclusion as best as I can, and try to say, okay, this is not the definitive painting. This is one of many, and it has some okay qualities, even if I'm not in love with it. And then the other thing is I've been learning to not beat myself up, you know. I'm going to screen share real quick. This is my studio, or part of my studio. So here is a still life setup I was working with, and here's a big landscape I just completed. So I thought you might enjoy seeing it. It's really fun. This is about 1/3 of it, but I constantly change things, and I've also evolved and changed in my work tremendously. If you look at my website, algury.com, you'll see earlier works that are more tonal. And then if you look at Fan Gallery, which is one of the galleries, you'll see this brightly colored new Fauvist work. That's kind of my new thing. So within each one, some days it's like I feel like I'm hitting it, and some days I'm just not, and I'm not sure why, and I overwork it. If it's really bad, I scrape it out, and I just say, okay, I'm starting over. So this is all very normal, Julia. And just try to be aware of, okay, when you get to that overworking feeling, take a break, get away from it.
Thanks. Yeah, when you're a relatively new, less established artist, one of the effects is it can start to make you feel like your successes are kind of flukes, you know,
Oh
like
yeah,
accidents. So, but I appreciate your encouragement. Thank you very much.
sure.
Hi, Al. Thank you so much for this. I do have one question. So I tend to be someone who gets bored easily with doing one style, and I frequently switch. I am always trying new techniques, new styles, and I mean, from one painting to another. We're not talking about necessarily a series in one style and then I switch to a different type of approach or something like that. I'm talking about one day the painting I did is one way, the next day is a completely different style, or I think it's a different style. Maybe someone else would say there's still many cohesive elements between the two. But so, I just wonder, in the art world, I feel like there's so much pressure to have a certain one style look to your art.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could comment on that.
Yes, there is a lot of pressure for that, and it comes out of a number of sources. One is gallery system, where artists are pressured to have a style or a look for one-person exhibitions and to be consistent, so that they can have a recognizable style. A lot of that, there's always two sides to it. Of course, it's valid for a lot of reasons, but also on the other hand, there's a negative pressure as well. It comes out of graduate programs where they encourage them to develop a style and that kind of thing. The reality is, many accomplished artists I know, including myself, have two or three, first of all, they may have several different subjects and also two or three different distinct styles that they work in. This is very, very common. And I have two thoughts on that. One is, first of all, that's totally valid to have a number of things you do. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I give you permission if I am able to even do that. The second thing is, the only thing I would say is when you have a number of interests, try to spend enough time with each one of them that you actually see the possibilities of each one. You go into depth so that you can see how you grow within that particular style or approach, so that you really give it its due. And then what you may find is that you have a number of ways of working that you've really gone into in depth, and you really understand them, and you can do something interesting and creative with them because you have spent time with them. A lot of people, if you give up too quickly, too easily, then you may have problems. You may never go in depth enough. So you want to keep that in mind, just as, painter's wisdom. There's a couple of, Steve Ember said, P.S. Wookie, my rescue kitty and I salute you for your work on behalf of neglected and homeless cats. Well, thank you. It's a really, it's a real issue all over the place, especially after COVID. A lot of animals are just being dumped and the shelters are overflowing. But I don't have to tell you all this, you know that. So any other questions, comments?
I have a question that I get asked sometimes is, how do you know when you're finished?
Good, very good question.
I mean, I have a sense, but I was just curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, the painting. Yeah, there's a number of, I think, cues that you can look towards. One is if you had an original idea of what you wanted, if the piece is achieving that look and feel, then you can say it's done. Another way that you can gauge that is by making sure that periodically you get away from it. You leave the room, you leave it to the next day, you come in, you see.
Turn it upside down.
Turn it upside down. I'm always coming back to a painting after a couple of days, and I'll do silly things like, it needs one dot of red there, or this corner is still weak. I need to do something there that keeps the viewer's eye from wandering out of the corners or off the bottom. So it's somewhat analytical in using those strategies, but then it's also subjective in the sense of, feels pretty good. If I keep doing more to it, I'm going to damage it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a sense, and you do enough of them, you get a sense of that, and you can get it pretty well. So maybe one last question, if anyone has one. No.
How's the Academy doing?
Academy's doing great.
They in person?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
We have been in person since last September. And through the school year, we did have to wear masks until January. We have very strict protocols. Everyone must be vaccinated, boosted, and have flu shots in the institution, whether they're staff, faculty, or students. And we had a very, very, very small number of cases because we managed it very well. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And the institution is doing quite well.
Good.
And having a whole array of beautiful shows, and there's some great stuff going on there as a leader in the arts, and I'm very involved in all of that, so it's pretty cool.
Good to hear.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Anne.
Thank you, Al. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts and all of your comments tonight. And thank you to all of the artists here tonight. I know it's a holiday weekend, but I really do appreciate all of you joining us for this. I hope you found it educational. What I will say is that it will be up on our YouTube. So if you wanted to check out some of the things that were discussed in a couple of days, you'll be able to pull it down and get some of Al's comments at your own leisure.
Sure, my pleasure. And there's a note from Julia that we were at University of Delaware together at the time. Wow, small world. I loved my time there. It was great. And so I really appreciate that. Maybe I'll see some of you in my continuing ed classes, who knows? But everyone, thank you so much for this honor. Good luck with your work. Stay strong, okay? Keep doing it. All right. right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And thank you.